That tree just fell on their trailer. Literally just now. God damn. And that's a big tree.
Parts of the West Coast bracing for a storm with all kinds of descriptions. Triple bombogenesis is a new one. It's already knocked down massive trees and power to more than 500,000 people and left at least 2 people dead in the Pacific Northwest. And that was just round 1. I'm Gadi Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. And that low-pressure storm known as a bomb cyclone could dump more than a foot of rain across Northern California over the next 2 days after blasting parts of Washington with hurricane-force winds. All of it ripping down trees, slamming them into homes, tossing them all over roads, and on top of cars and buses like you see here. This was also Seattle's biggest power outage since 2006. We were talking 114,000 customers. Parts of the Sierra Mountains and the Cascades were also dealing with heavy snow, leading to whiteout conditions and slick roads with even more snow to come. And this is one massive storm. Just look at its sheer size from space. Forecasters are calling it a once-in-a-decade bomb cyclone. That's what's fueling another storm system that's already pushing Northern California, increasing the threat of heavy rain, flooding, and snow over the next few days. We've got team coverage tonight. NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns will have the forecast. But first, let's go to Chase Kane in Fortuna, California. Chase, thanks for joining us. What are conditions looking like right now?
Gadi, it's just been, kind of a moderate rain, a mild day, all things considered. Some storms can be like a really intense sprint if you think about a race. This one is much more like a marathon. The first part of that marathon was much worse for Washington State, as you were alluding to. A lot of damage there. 2 people confirmed dead in Washington State. But it's that second round, the one that's coming tomorrow and into Friday. That's what folks here along the Northern California coast are really bracing for. This is the Eel River here behind me. It's already risen about 3 feet. But by Friday afternoon, there's a flood watch in effect because this river is expected to rise about another 20 feet, which would put it at a moderate flood stage. And then more broadly across the area, a flood watch and a high wind watch in place beginning tomorrow afternoon, because as these rains pick up and the wind picks up, that's the combination that no one really wants to see. If the forecast holds and there's more than a foot of rain in some places, and then you add consistent 30 or 40 mile an hour winds, wind gusts of 50 or 60 miles an hour, it's a bad combination for trees, right? That's going to bring down trees, bring down power lines, and also in areas where they've had wildfires, the potential that those burn scars could flood more easily, causing mudslides. So that's why folks here are really bracing for the next round, Gadi. That's really going to ramp up by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon.
And Chase, why are they calling it a triple bombogenesis?
Yeah, so it's basically bombing out. One way to think of it is like rapid intensification with the hurricane. The lower the pressure gets inside the hurricane, the stronger the hurricane gets, right? It's similar with this. It's a different type of storm, a mid-latitude cyclone, but it's still basically the barometric pressure dropping really quickly. Roughly 20 millibars in 24 hours is the criteria for bombogenesis. This was basically 3 times that. So that's where you're getting that triple bombogenesis from. So it's essentially just a mid-latitude cyclone that we have all the time, but it's one that's intensifying really quickly, and this term goes back for several decades. So it's not, we should point out, it's not like a new term that social media has come up with. This is a meteorological term that's been around for several decades, Gadi.
We learn something new every day. Chase Kane, thank you. Now let's bring in NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, what's this storm got next in store here?
Yeah, this is a pretty rare situation, guys. So obviously we talked about this huge bomb cyclone. You can still see it spinning up there off the coast of British Columbia. That's going to actually be replaced by another bomb cyclone that's going to start forming tomorrow. That's going to continue to drive this atmospheric river into California. So back-to-back bomb cyclones. And what's even more wild is then those 2 storms are going to kind of spin out in the ocean around each other as we go throughout the coming days. So what does this all mean? This just means we have 2 powerful storms driving a lot of rain into the same areas over and over. And that's why the flooding concerns are only going to grow in Northern California as we go throughout this day tomorrow, and especially tomorrow night into early Friday. You just notice the pouring rains here north of San Francisco, Eureka to Crescent City. And as we go throughout Friday evening into Saturday morning, finally it begins to kick out. Another weaker system towards the end of the weekend. But most of the damage, as far as the rainfall threat, will be in the next 24 to 36 hours. That's why we have this rare high risk here from Eureka southwards to Fort Bragg. It was pretty dry in this area before this, Gadi, so we only have like 1 river that's supposed to go in the moderate flood stage. But still, the flooding risk, mudslides, landslides, that's the biggest concern with 15 inches possible of rain.
Yes, those perfect spirals out there in the Pacific are something to see. Is there a climate connection here?
I mean, there is. Now, with the storm itself, you know, the actual bomb cyclone, it's kind of low on our understanding of how global warming influences extratropical cyclones, that we call them. You know, we know with droughts and extreme rain and heat waves and cold, we can really make a good case of why they're happening and why they're worse. Not so much with extratropical cyclones. But there is a lot of new research that goes on with atmospheric rivers. And the theory is that with the warmer atmosphere, it can hold more moisture. So these atmospheric rivers are growing in size. They're lasting in longer because they're longer in duration. And that, of course, means more rainfall. In some cases, Gadi, that's good to fill up reservoirs. But if you have too much of it, it could also mean damaging flooding.
And Bill, we're also keeping an eye on that dry spell happening in the Northeast, which is so weird with all this wetness happening here in the West. But you guys are going to get some rain tonight, right?
Yeah, we're putting an end to it. It's got hours left. So tomorrow morning, heavy rain in New York City and most of the Northeast. Friday, some showers. Then it's kind of dry Saturday, Sunday. It looks like an active weather pattern after this, heading towards Thanksgiving, too. So you won't hear any more about fire problems. And the drought, going to take a dent out of it. 1 to 2 inches of rain is expected as we go throughout tomorrow morning. And you'll also got to see a lot of pictures of snow everywhere from Chicago to Indianapolis. People in Ohio Valley, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, New York. A lot of people will see their first snowflakes of the early winter season as we go throughout the day tomorrow, too.
From fire to rain to snow, Bill Cairns, thank you. And let's go to Capitol Hill and the latest with Matt Gaetz and that House ethics report. And as we have now learned, that investigation digging into accusations of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use by former Congressman Matt Gaetz will not see the light of day, at least not now. And here is why this is a big deal. Senators from both parties have been trying to get their hands on the years-long bipartisan report because those same senators will be vetting Gaetz if he is to be confirmed as Trump's pick for Attorney General. Now, as the House Ethics Committee was meeting behind closed doors today, Gaetz and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance were working the halls and meeting with Republican senators, trying to win as much support as they could.
They've been going great. Senator's been giving me a lot of good advice. I'm looking forward to a hearing. Folks have been very supportive. They've been saying we're going to get a fair process. So it's a great day of momentum for the Trump-Vance administration.
So for now, the committee says it's going to meet again on December 5th to talk more about the Gaetz report. Let's get into all of this with NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin. Julie, so a big meeting behind closed doors on all of this. Any word on why that report wasn't released today?
Well, it depends on who you ask, Democrats or Republicans, because we got two very different versions of the story. The first being that the chairman, Michael Guest, came out after that 2-hour or so meeting behind closed doors and said that there was no agreement, no consensus on whether to move forward in releasing this report. And then we got a different story from the top Democrat on that panel who wanted to make sure that nothing was misconstrued. Watch this.
Are you at least going to release it to the Senate?
There has been no agreement to release the report.
I do not want the American public or anyone else to think that Mr. Guest's characterization of what transpired today would be some sort of indication that the committee had unanimity or consensus on this issue, not to release the report.
So here's what happened here, Gadi, for those of us who don't speak Capitol Hill speak, and that is that this is a 10-member panel, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats. They do their business behind closed doors. As Susan Wild, that top Democrat that you saw there, pointed out, members often cross the aisle when figuring out whether to vote to release a report, whether to launch an investigation against a member. And in this case, if you're reading between the lines, what Wild was suggesting is that all the Democrats voted to release it, to finish it, whatever have you, and Republicans did not, because if just one Republican did vote to release it, they would have.
Huh. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that no agreement, that's what she was taking issue with? Is that right?
Yeah, because it makes it seem, and this is the question that I had when Guest said it to us, it makes it seem like where was the disagreement? Was it bipartisan? Did Democrats play into the disagreement? Clearly not.
Got it. And talk to us about those meetings between J.D. Vance, Matt Gaetz, some of the lawmakers they met with. Who did they meet, and what do we know about all that?
Well, I'll tell you that I just watched Matt Gaetz and Vice President-elect Vance leave after being in this building for many hours since the early morning, meeting with members on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Republican members, also meeting with John Thune, who was voted to be the majority leader next Congress of Senate Republicans here. So pretty significant. You're seeing a part of those meetings on your screen. I just ran into Senator John Cornyn, for example, literally minutes before I came to talk to you, Gadi, who sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee. He's a Republican. He was skeptical. He wants to see that report come out of the House Ethics Committee. And he said he straight up pressed Gaetz on what his problem with Kevin McCarthy is, which I find so interesting because Gaetz is actually the reason Kevin McCarthy lost his job. And you can see that senators are still finding issues with the way Gaetz handled that process. We also heard from Senator Lindsey Graham, for example, who is currently the top Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee, but won't be next Congress. He said, quote, "This process will not be a rubber stamp, nor will it be driven by a lynch mob." He fears the process surrounding the Gaetz nomination is turning into an angry mob, and unverified allegations are being treated as if they are true. I have seen this movie before. When Graham first found out about the Gaetz nomination or Trump's intent to nominate Gaetz, I asked him, I ran into him in the hallway. He didn't hear of that coming, so it was a surprise to him as well, even though he spends a lot of time on the phone with the president-elect. So a lot happening here in the Capitol, and we're staying all over it, Gadi.
Yeah, and you know who has not seen this movie before? Us. We have not seen this movie, and I think a lot of us would like to see it. Julie Sirkin, thank you. And now, as all this is happening over on Capitol Hill, Trump keeps announcing new names for his cabinet. Just last night, Trump former World Wrestling Entertainment executive Linda McMahon for Education Secretary. And today, Matt Whitaker for Ambassador to the UN. Now, for a quick moment, he was the Attorney General during Trump's first term. Let's bring in NBC's Vaughn Hilliard to talk about these new picks. Vaughn, let's start with Linda McMahon here. We know her from the WWE, but she does have some background in education, right?
Very limited, Gadi. Let's be very frank here. This is kind of a surprising nomination on the front that she has such a limited educational background. In 2009, she served on the Connecticut School of Board of Education, but resigned from that post in 2010. And she has served for a number of years on the Board of Trustees of a small private university in Connecticut of 500 students. But that's it. Where her relevance really comes into Donald Trump's factor here is not only did she serve as a small business administrator during his first term, but of course she was also a big donor, contributing more than $20 million over the last several years towards his political causes. But she also was serving as a co-chair on his transition team the last several months, helping this transition get off the ground and go through and start to establish some personnel. So she has been somebody who has been very loyal to the former and now President-elect Trump. But also at the same time, she is somebody here who, we should note, her husband, Vince McMahon, is under investigation by the Department of Justice for allegations of potentially being aware of sex trafficking of minors by a former WWE employee. And so there is a level of scrutiny on the McMahon family at this time that Donald Trump is also nominating her to take over the Department of Education, which we should also note on the campaign trail, Gadi, Donald Trump promised to get rid of come 2025 when he took the White House. So there's a lot of layers to this nomination.
I'm so glad you brought that up because it seems almost like a contradiction. You're saying you're going to dismantle the Department of Education, and yet you make a cabinet pick for the Department of Education. Is that because in order to dismantle the department, you have to have the secretary on board? Or can you explain that to us? Because it seems contradictory.
Right. I think that there's a lot of questions that would be great to get the answers from Donald Trump on, because on one hand, Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, they have touted that they're going to try to consolidate departments and agencies, and they, along with Donald Trump, have said they want to completely dismantle the Department of Education. But in the meanwhile, there still needs to be a secretary, at least come January 2025, and so that's what they've tapped McMahon to do. We should note in the press release that they sent out announcing her nomination, they did say that she was going to advocate for school choice around the country. So there are clear issues and a policy that they want to advance on the educational front, but they have argued that education should largely go back to the states and the federal components of it should go out to other departments, and that the federalization of education in the country is unnecessary.
And Vaughn, now Whitaker, ambassador to NATO, seems like a very big position considering the situation in Ukraine and Russia, and then Trump's hard line with NATO in the past. How does Whitaker match up to that?
Right. It's another interesting selection because Matt Whitaker is somebody who served as acting attorney general for 4 months in 2018 and 2019. He's a longtime attorney, including at the Department of Justice, but he does not have any international or foreign diplomatic history. He has not served in a role in the military or as part of during his first administration in a capacity that had to do with diplomacy. So it's an interesting pick, but clearly Donald Trump has faith and trust and confidence in Matt Whitaker in this post. And as you said, NATO is going to be front and center conversation for these next 4 years because Donald Trump has repeatedly suggested that the U.S. could potentially not defend its NATO allies if they don't, if those countries do not put enough money of their GDP toward their own defenses. And so there are some serious questions, especially at a time in which Russia has shown not only aggression into Ukraine, but concern about advancing beyond Ukraine's borders and the role that NATO would play in defending its allies. And so there's a lot of questions that undoubtedly Matt Whitaker will face come confirmation from not only Democratic senators, but also Republican senators about the way that he views the NATO alliance and the U.S.'s role in it.
Unless we see recess appointments. Vaughn Hilliard, thank you. We've got some breaking news out of Idaho where the judge in the Brian Kohberger case ruled he can still face a death penalty at his trial next summer. Now, this is something that Kohberger's lawyers have been trying very hard to get tossed. NBC News contributor Kristen Gibbons-Fedden joins us now. She's a civil rights attorney and a former prosecutor. Kristen, thanks so much for being with us. Is this surprising to you at all?
I'm not surprised at all. Gadi, look, the judge's decision to allow the death penalty in this case, it really does send a strong message about the severity of the crimes. 4 young lives were tragically lost in what is undeniably a horrific and brutal act. But I'm also not surprised because the judge's decision not only reflects the gravity of the charges, but it also aligns with Idaho law, which permits capital punishment for cases involving multiple victims and extreme brutality, which exists here. So when the judge kind of rejected the defendant's constitutional challenges and overall concerns about the execution methods, the court was really just affirming the state's legal framework for which the death penalty in Idaho is actually valid.
It's so interesting because in cases, a lot of times, like you have the death penalty debate after all of this is adjudicated or after it goes to the court system. This time, it's happening well before the trial. If he is convicted, I mean, this is something that the prosecutors have been pushing for since day one. Do you think that the death penalty is something that we will see come down?
You know, it's a strong possibility if he is convicted. You know, Gadi, as you pointed out, it is discussed a lot afterwards, but I actually tried a capital homicide case. And I can tell you this is something that, you know, you have to outline in the beginning of the trial. Really, you have to give notice at arraignment, which was done here. You know, and I think when you look at the overall case, there is compelling evidence, including DNA on the knife sheath. They have the cell phone data, if you recall, near the victim's home. They have surveillance footage of his vehicle. So the prosecution really does have a strong case. But after that happens, then there's that secondary phase, which would be the death penalty phase. And there, the Idaho prosecutors will have to show aggravating factors to determine whether or not the death penalty should be a viable punishment in this case. And here there's actually 4 aggravating factors, Gadi. There's multiple victims. It's a really especially heinous and cruel nature of the killings. And through that, they can show that Kohberger really did have a disregard for human life and the claim that he poses an ongoing threat to society, just by the sheer number and the way that these poor people were killed. So if the jury unanimously agrees, then they would impose the judge would impose the death penalty.
Kristen, we always appreciate your analysis. Thank you. And now to a pretty big update on who might have robbed the homes of Kansas City Chiefs stars Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Authorities are investigating the possibility of South American crime syndicates possibly being involved here. But it wasn't just the 2 NFL stars who were robbed in Kansas City. NBA player Bobby Portis Jr. was also a victim. The Milwaukee Bucks star posting this on X after his Wisconsin home was robbed earlier this month.
What's good, Milwaukee? I appreciate all the love and support you guys shown me over the weekend regarding the home invasion. I am now offering a $40K cash reward for any information or tips that leads to the return of my stolen items.
That's one way to go about it. Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky with more on what's going on right now. So, Morgan, sounds like a sophisticated ring here. Can we connect all these to one organized crime ring, or is it too early to tell?
Investigators are certainly trying, Gadi, and special thanks to Tom Winter and Andrew Blankstein. These are the colleagues that have been following this all day long. What their reporting suggests, according to two senior law enforcement officials here, Gadi, is that the FBI is now working with the help of police and local law enforcement to try to connect to a certain South American crime ring. Now, I know this isn't something you typically think of when you hear burglary and overseas criminals, but they say in this case, there's enough evidence out there that they're now exploring this as a potential option. Experts say, Gadi, that they are highly efficient, highly professional, and that those capabilities are what have allowed them to pull off crimes across the country, but most notably, they cannot specifically connect this ring to these high-profile burglaries, but I don't think it's an accident that they're now exploring this potential option in light of the fact that we've seen some huge names be struck by burglars.
And it seems like they're going after some very high-value targets here. Are they going after them at certain times? I mean, their schedules are like very public. You know when their games are. Do we know when their houses were hit?
Right. They're keeping some of the details close to the vest for right now. But to your point, we would think that being a celebrity would almost be an added layer of protection through security measures, through security personnel. In certain cases, though, Gadi, because their schedules are so public, whether they're performing a tour or they're playing a game on the road or even playing a game at Chiefs Stadium, people know where these celebrities are at specific times. And security experts we spoke to say that that absolutely can aid them in having access to a property, knowing they're not going to be interrupted. And they also included the fact that these are not smash and grab jobs, Gadi. In some cases, they can kill power, kill internet, allowing them to enter without really breaking in, grab what they need, and then get out before anyone even notices they were there.
A lot of people here in Los Angeles and down in San Diego, their ears are going to be perking up, and they're going to be like, wait, South American gangs, a crime syndicate, and, you know, pretty big brazen burglaries. That's something that we've been dealing with here, too. Is there any chance that this is all connected?
Still too early to tell if this potential ring could be connected to the string of crimes we've seen here in Southern California. But law enforcement experts we spoke to said that having overseas criminals come to the U.S. to pull off these kind of crimes is not exactly new. In fact, it's become so prevalent over the entire country that they even have a name for it. They're calling it burglary tourism. And because they are so sophisticated and they have the means allowing them to get in and get out, those paydays only fueling them to keep doing this going forward.
Yeah, let's hope that trend does not continue. Morgan Chesky, thank you. Thanks. And in South Carolina, convicted child killer Susan Smith was just denied parole. She is currently serving a life sentence after confessing to drowning her two young boys back in 1994. NBC's Kathy Park has that story.
Despite a request for freedom, a South Carolina parole board denied Susan Smith's release roughly 30 years after she was found guilty of drowning her two young boys, Alex and Michael.
Susan Smith is denied parole. The vote is unanimous.
Appearing virtually, the now 53-year-old Smith expressed remorse for her actions.
I want to say how very sorry I am. I know that what I did was horrible. And I would give anything if I could go back and change it.
Smith first made national headlines October 1994 when she claimed a black man carjacked her vehicle with her children still inside. Authorities launched an intense 9-day search for a suspect, but ultimately she confessed to killing her sons. Her then estranged husband, David Smith, stood by her side as they pleaded for help.
I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much.
Today, he spoke against her release.
This wasn't a tragic mistake. She purposely meant to end their life. She changed my life for the rest of my life that night.
The original prosecutors in the case saying the board made the right decision.
Do you think she's the same woman that she was 30 years ago?
I believe Susan is the same woman she was 30 years ago when she laughed in the courtroom when the jury wasn't in and cried as soon as the jury came in.
David Smith turning the focus back to his sons and his commitment to keeping Susan in jail as she reapplies for parole every 2 years.
For 2 more years, there'll still be justice for Michael and Alex.
3 decades later, when you mention Susan Smith's name in this community, it almost triggers an immediate response. The chances of her actually getting parole later down the road, it's still pretty slim. The rate for violent offenders is just 8%. Gadi?
Kathy Park, thank you. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, the future of schools without the Department of Education. What classes and teaching might look like if the president-elect follows through on a promise to gut the Department of Education. A former education secretary joins us to talk about what could be lost. Plus, an NBC News exclusive. Courtney Cubie goes one-on-one with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. His first comments about the man tapped to replace him. And later this hour, Diagnosis AI. No, this is not a new primetime drama. What researchers found when ChatGPT was pitted against actual doctors. How the emerging tech is gaining medical knowledge. That's all coming up in tonight's Future of Everything. Hey there, welcome back. And here are some of the headlines we're watching tonight. The man on trial for murdering a Georgia nursing student was found guilty today. Jose Ibarra was sentenced to life without parole for the murder of Laken Riley. Riley's death became a flashpoint in the immigration debate because Ibarra had entered the U.S. illegally. And earlier today, a judge dismissed a wrongful death case brought by the parents of Gabby Petito against police in Utah. Petito's parents say that the police should have prevented her death. Just 2 weeks before she was killed, officers had questioned both Petito and her boyfriend during a domestic violence incident. And Drunk Elephant is recalling some products due to an ingredient mix-up that could cause skin reactions. Now, that company is warning of possible reactions for sensitive users in rare cases, risk of infection as well. And House Speaker Mike Johnson is back in rules banning transgender people from using restrooms in the Capitol building that do not match their biological sex. The move follows Representative-elect Sarah McBride's historic win as the first openly transgender member of Congress. And the Pope says the world's first millennial saint will be canonized in April. Carlos Acutis died of leukemia in 2006 at the age of 15. But before his death, he used his online savvy to record miracles online and run websites for Catholic organizations and was known as God's influencer. And with a new administration coming to Washington, the future of the Department of Education is a very big question mark.
It's about school choice, and it's also we're going to get it out of Washington.
I want to close up Department of Education, move education back to the state.
We will respect the right of parents to control the education of their children.
There you go. President-elect Donald Trump's plan seems to be to straight up eliminate the Department of Education, send control back to the states. And the how is still murky at this point. But if he pulls it off, it would mean dismantling a department created 45 years ago by President Jimmy Carter.
President Carter today signed into law a bill establishing a new federal department. It's the Department of Education, something he had promised in his 1976 election campaign. It will be the 13th cabinet-level agency of the government. It will take over 150 or more educational programs now in the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare.
Since that bill was signed in 1979, high school graduation rates, you see here, have shot up from 71 to about 87% today. College enrollment has also climbed. But when it comes to testing, recently the United States has fallen far from the top. We are 26th in the world for math, reading, and science, not even touching the top 5. Even the current administration says those rankings are unacceptable.
Standardized tests work best when they serve as a flashlight on what works and what needs attention, not as hammers to drive the outcomes from the top down, often pointing fingers to those with greater needs and less resources. We must do better. We must act like our national security depends on it.
And joining us now is Margaret Spellings, who served as Secretary of Education under President Bush from 2005 to 2009. She's also the president and CEO of the Bipartisan Policy Center. Welcome. Thanks so much for being with us. Let's start with the news of the day. President-elect Trump, his choice for Education Secretary is Linda McMahon. Do you think she's qualified for this position?
I do. I think she's a good choice. She has experience running a large federal agency and presumably experience with the Congress. She's a successful entrepreneur and businesswoman who knows how to manage a big enterprise. She's been a member of a state board of education and a university board. And I think she's a good choice. She obviously runs the transition team or co-chairs the transition team, knows a lot of the people in the Trump orbit, and that will serve her well, too.
And if the Department of Education is done away with, what happens to programs like Title I, for example, or Pell Grants or special education funding? I know in the past, Title I was under Health and Human Services, or if I recall correctly, but where do those programs go now?
Health, education, and welfare. Yeah, it was where those lived previously. Well, it's really the prerogative of the Congress to decide whether we have those programs, how adequately they're funded, and where they reside. This is not something that can be solely done by the executive. And so I think there's two questions. One, are we going to have the programs at all? And if so, where should they live? And what we know about the Department of Education is that 3/4 of their remit actually is in post-secondary education. About 3/4 of the staff and the resources are all around the funding of Pell Grants, financial aid, and so forth. The remainder is, as you say, Title I, IDEA, with the thesis that we do have a federal stake in closing the achievement gap and providing opportunity more broadly across our country.
When you look at those global rankings, why do you think a lot of our test scores right now are so low?
Well, we actually had an uptick in the early 2000s that was a good 10-year run. And I think, COVID obviously has been a major retreat on student achievement for a lot of reasons. And we're still recovering from that. And frankly, we need to really up our urgency around the needs of our students. And that, I think, is the number one question as lawmakers and folks in the administration consider, what is it that should be the responsibility? What is our, imperative as a nation around serving students better than we do today?
And there's the argument that those that make those decisions should be at the local level. So leaving education solely to the state, but maybe with a lot more funding, do you think that could work? How do you see the Trump administration's plans possibly affecting teachers here?
So the federal government is really just a minority investor in K-12 education currently. About 9 cents on the dollar comes from the federal government, and it is meted out in ways that target largely poor and disadvantaged populations. Most of the authority, and rightly so, because most of the money comes from state and local government, largely states. And so issues around curriculum and school choice and parent control, the curriculum, the books in the library, that is all in the purview of states and localities and not the federal government. In fact, there are express prohibitions for the feds controlling curriculum.
Mm-hmm. And 9 cents on the dollar, when you're talking about those 9 cents, where does the bulk of those federal funds, where do those go?
They go to Title I, to IDEA, to programs that are largely targeted at disadvantaged students around the thesis, and this gets back to the founding and the aftermath of the Great Society, LBJ, when those programs were initially created as part of HEW and then into the Carter administration, that we as a nation had an interest in leveling the playing field and providing opportunity for all of our students, no matter where they lived.
Are you optimistic about what you're seeing, or do you think that there could be problems on the horizon here?
Well, this notion of abolishing the Department of Education has been kind of standard Republican fare for a very long time, since Ronald Reagan and so, as you know, the Department of Education stands to this day. So I do think it's right for us to have a conversation about what is the rightful federal role, what's the right level of resourcing, and on things that are critical to this day, like the capacity of the American workforce and the programs that are frankly sprinkled throughout the federal government, at the Department of Labor, at the Department of Education. Perhaps we can manage those better. Maybe they should all be at the Department of Commerce around a thesis about improving our economy and growth in the economy. But whether those programs exist at all is the first question. And secondly, that's where you save the money, is to eliminate things. And then if you are going to have them, what's the best and most appropriate way to house them. The other thing I would say, and it's clearly something that President Bush and I worked a lot on, is if we're going to spend money, we have to know what we're getting for it. And we have to have accountability, both in higher education and in K-12, to know, are we seeing results? And at the moment, it's not a pretty picture.
Do you think that the results that we may see and the metrics for those results, which are based on the testing that we use today, those will also change with this shakeup at the Department of Education?
Not necessarily. I mean, we have what's called our National Education Report Card. That has been on the books for a very long time. One of the clips that you showed prior to my joining this section is about the need to shine a light and understand where we are. We can't fix problems that we don't fully understand. And so I think there is a rightful role for data and evidence and elevating, what works and what isn't working. And so I think that's an important role, and one that, yes, we need to calibrate. Every single state has their own unique test that is derived by the state, and as it should be. They're paying the bills. They ought to describe what do they want their kids to know, and how do they know that those kids are learning that body of knowledge.
Margaret Spelling's quite the lesson today. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us tonight.
Thank you, Gadi.
And coming up, breaking up is hard to do. So we're going to be talking about what's next for Comcast as it announces plans to spin off a slew of cable networks, where TV, as we once knew it, could be heading next. But first, you got to see this. A Michael Jackson impersonator in Chicago surprised a nursing home with an impromptu performance. But artist Rico Hampton got the real surprise when a woman, she couldn't contain the way he made her feel and just jumped out of her wheelchair to dance with him. And she didn't stop till she got enough. Woo-hoo! We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. Today, family and friends showed up to the funeral of former One Direction star Liam Payne. A private event was held in southeast England, and all of his former bandmates were there. Payne died a little over a month ago after falling from a third-floor balcony at a Buenos Aires hotel, and 3 people have been charged in connection with his death. He was 31 years old. And Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai testified for the first time in his landmark national security trial, denying accusations that he tried to influence foreign policy. Prosecutors say the former publisher tried to undermine Beijing's authority over Hong Kong, and that he's the driving force behind anti-government protests that swept the country back in 2019. Lai faces 2 counts of colluding with foreign forces, which could send him to prison for life. Ford says it is going to cut 4,000 jobs in Europe and the UK. Nearly 3,000 of them would be lost in Germany. And this comes as the company says it's struggling to sell electric vehicles. They say the layoffs will help them compete with China. And the movie Rust had its world premiere at a small film festival in Poland today, and that started with a moment of silence to honor the film's cinematographer, Helena Hutchins, who was accidentally shot and killed on the set 3 years ago. Here's what attendees had to say and why they decided to go.
I believe it's really important to see the last work. As filmmaker, for me, it would be also important.
You did feel a little tension. It's inevitable, which is a bummer because the movie is really nice, and it always have that stain on it.
Alec Baldwin, the star of the film, was pointing a gun at Hutchins during a rehearsal when it went off, killing her. He did not attend that premiere. And current Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin is speaking out tonight about his potential successor, Pete Hegseth's comments about women in combat. In an exclusive interview, NBC's Courtney Cubie sits down with him for a wide-ranging talk, starting with the latest developments in the conflict in Ukraine and Russia.
Tonight, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin weighing in on escalating tensions with Russia, after the U.S. made the rare move to temporarily close its embassy in Kyiv amid a threat of a significant Russian air attack. And President Putin lowered the threshold for his country to use nuclear weapons.
Is there a reason to believe that Vladimir Putin may use a nuclear weapon?
We've known for several weeks that they were revamping their policy on use of nuclear weapons. I don't see an indication that there's an imminent intent to use nuclear weapons.
Is he bluffing with this change?
He has rattled his nuclear saber quite quite a bit, and this is dangerous behavior.
In his first interview since Donald Trump was elected again and chose media personality and veteran Pete Hegseth to take over the Pentagon, Austin addressed some of Hegseth's views.
Your possible successor has said that women should not serve in combat roles and they make fighting more complicated. Do you agree?
I have spent 41 years in uniform, and everywhere I went on a battlefield, there were women in our formation. I would tell you that, our women are the finest troops that in the world.
Do you have any concern that women impact readiness of these units?
They do impact readiness. They make us better. They make us stronger. This is not hyperbole. This is fact. I'm just telling you what I've seen.
Your likely successor has also said recently the U.S. has to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs because of his support for diversity initiatives. How would Captain Lloyd Austin have felt about a statement like that out of the incoming Secretary of Defense?
Captain Lloyd Austin would be very concerned. Courtney, I think it's important that young officers, young soldiers, young sergeants be able to see themselves in our senior leadership. This is the third time that I've served with General Brown directly. He's one of the most competent officers I've ever worked with.
I asked Secretary Austin if he thinks Pete Hegseth has what it takes to be Secretary of Defense, and he said he doesn't know him. He did acknowledge the U.S. decision to send anti-personnel landmines to Ukraine, saying he thinks that right now is the right time to do so. Courtney Cuby, NBC News, Vientiane, Laos.
Courtney, thank you. And still ahead, why private prisons could see a whole lot of money from the new Trump administration's deportation plan. The big bet being made on Wall Street right now. Hey, welcome back. And some major news tonight from our parent company, Comcast, and this is big. It is planning on spinning off its cable networks into this new publicly traded company, and they're on your screen right now. We are talking about MSNBC, CNBC, E!, USA Today, and Sci-Fi. Those staying within Comcast include our very own NBC News Now, NBC News, NBC Broadcast Network, Peacock, and Bravo. Okay, so what does this actually mean for you and your favorite shows? Let's bring in senior entertainment and media reporter at Yahoo News, Alexandra Canal, to translate this for us. Alexandra, thanks so much for being with us. I mean, people that are watching this right now already know this, but like how people watch TV, that's changed completely in recent years. Cord cutting is becoming a lot more common. How did that play into what we're seeing today here?
Cord cutting was one of the top reasons, if not the reason, why Comcast decided to do this. We've seen cord cutting escalate across the board as consumers veer away from traditional cable packages and opt for less expensive streaming alternatives. That's exactly what's happening right here. You've seen legacy media companies really focus their efforts on high growth areas of the business. That includes streaming, and they're no longer really want to pay attention to what's no longer serving them, which are these cable channels, these cable networks, as cord cutting really continues to accelerate. You even look at something like MSNBC, which is one of the most successful cable properties within the Comcast umbrella, and that's projected to lose over 10% of subscribers between the end of 2023 and the end of 2025. So the outlook just looks really bleak there, and that's pretty much the main motivating factor why we're seeing this news today.
One of the surprising things to all of us was the timeline. This is an idea that we've been hearing rumblings about in other companies. Disney's CEO Bob Iger was floating a similar idea for ABC, for ESPN not too long ago, but it looks like Comcast is going through with this first. Could this move maybe convince other companies to go with their own splits?
Absolutely. And I was surprised by it, too. It was only a few weeks ago that Comcast was teasing something like this, and now they have made the announcement. And I certainly think this sets the stage for other legacy media companies. You mentioned Bob Iger. He was teasing potentially spinning off the linear side of the business. He's since walked back those comments, but you never know. He could change his mind again. We heard from Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav a few weeks ago, and he said that the incoming Trump administration will probably lead to more media deal making, as Trump has been viewed as being more friendly to deal making as opposed to Biden. So there's already been a lot of talk on the executive side about what we could see. It's clear that we're in a time of mass mass disruption. And potentially this new spun-off company from Comcast, that could be a potential roll-up vehicle for them to go and purchase other cable entities at some of its competitors. So you think about a Warner Brothers Discovery, maybe CNN goes to this new spin-off company. Who knows? There's a lot of possibilities there, and I certainly think it's going to set things up for a while to 2025.
Yeah, I think the name for now, the temporary name, SpinCo, seems pretty apt. Alexandra, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And tonight we are watching a bump on Wall Street that you might not have expected, all thanks to Donald Trump's re-election. We are talking about private prison stocks, which have been going sky high since Election Day. And a big reason why is because of Trump's plan for mass deportations. NBC's Brian Chung explains.
Call it the Trump trade.
Continuing to add to that post-election pop.
Among the biggest winners, private prison companies whose stock prices have soared on President-elect Trump's promise for mass deportations.
We will carry out the largest deportation operation of criminals in American history.
Shares of Geo Group and CoreCivic rose more than 50% since the election. The private prison companies say they're ready to detain more undocumented immigrants. Geo Group said after its latest earnings that it's well positioned to more than double the number of detainee beds from over 13,000 now to potentially over 31,000 in the future. It also said it could scale up its monitoring programs for migrants, like case management apps and GPS trackers, from 182,000 now to millions of people.
The Geo Group was built for this unique moment in our country's history and the opportunities that it will bring.
The company did not respond to our request for comment on expansion. Wall Street analyst Brian Violino says Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, could bump up their business.
There's generally an expectation that there will be a significant increase in the amount of beds being required by ICE for some of, again, what Trump has proposed that he was looking to do in his second term, which would directly impact both Geo and CoreCivic.
According to the ACLU, more than 90% of people detailed in ICE custody are held in private prisons, a number that actually increased during Biden's administration. Violino says both Geo Group and CoreCivic currently generate about 30% of their revenue from ICE. But the private prison industry has faced scrutiny from critics like the ACLU.
We see private prison companies cutting costs, not providing medical care, not providing people the safe and humane conditions that they deserve.
The ACLU issued a report earlier this year alleging that many of the 68 deaths that occurred in ICE custody, most of which happened in private facilities, could have been prevented, including the suicide of Panama-born Jean Jimenez.
He was amazing. He inspired so many people. And he inspired me to dream.
Jean's sister says he came to this country as a child and had DACA status, but was detained in 2017 after getting pulled over driving.
Unfortunately, he ended up in solitary confinement.
Jean was at a CoreCivic-run facility in Georgia. An ICE memo noted he needed help for schizophrenia, but also said the detention center didn't have the appropriate psychiatric resources to help him.
You have a system that's structured to maximize the most amount of beds as possible, to keep those occupied so they can increase their profit.
CoreCivic tells us in part its responsibility is to care for each person respectfully and humanely while they receive the legal due process that they are entitled to. Also saying ICE was responsible for medical and mental health care services at that facility at the time of Jimenez's death. ICE did not respond to our request for comment about Jimenez and referred us to the Trump transition team regarding policy. They said, in part, Trump was elected to, quote, change the status quo in Washington.
The more people that are going to be held in the detention system, the more danger that people are going to face as a result of the conditions in these detention facilities.
Concerned that Trump's return to the White House will flood private prisons as others prepare for a massive business opportunity.
Yeah, not a sector you hear a lot about on Wall Street, but one with potential ramifications still yet to be seen. Brian Chung reporting for us tonight. Brian, thank you. And before we go, it is time for the future of everything. Paging Dr. AI. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. That's what you're thinking about. We are digging into a study that's putting ChatGPT's medical knowledge to the test, how its skills to diagnose illnesses compare to actual doctors. And is this even a good thing to try out? That's next in the future of medicine. And in tonight's Future of Everything, the future of medicine and whether AI chatbots might be faster at diagnosing what's wrong with you when you start to feel off. This new study has some very interesting results. In it, 50 doctors were given case studies and were graded on accurate diagnoses, and some doctors were only allowed to use conventional methods to figure it out. Others could use ChatGPT as well, and the doctors who only used conventional methods, they scored an average of 74%. That's like a solid C. While the ones who used ChatGPT scored a little bit higher, 76%. But here's the kicker. When tested by itself with no doctor, ChatGPT alone scored a 90%. So let's bring in our favorite human doctor to see what all of this is about, Dr. Akshay Syal. So, doctor, does this mean that, like, AI is better at diagnosing than you?
Right. I better find a new line of work, right? I better study for the LSAT. And no, so, Gadi, I think this is not the first study to find this recently. I think this is like the 4th or 5th study. You know, there've even been studies this year that have shown ChatGPT is actually better at bedside manner. And I don't even know how they figured that out, but it seems to be more empathetic and able to provide that reassurance to patients in a better way than humans can. And I think, you know, when we're looking at all these studies combined, especially the one from this week, you know, I want to show you, there's a tweet here from Greg Brockman, who's the president and co-founder of OpenAI, which is responsible for ChatGPT. You can see he just cited those stats that you pointed out, but I think his takeaway is really the key takeaway here. And really what we need is more teamwork between humans and AI, because when you see that those top two numbers, the doctors with and without ChatGPT are essentially performing the same, which is telling us they have no idea how to use this. Right. And it's not something we're taught in medical school, right? So when doctors are using these search engines, they don't really know what they're doing. And I think until we can get doctors to use this better and doctors to be a little bit less stubborn, which admittedly we are, that's what we really need, because ultimately you can see it's better for patient care.
Wait, doctors are stubborn?
Yeah, hard to believe, right?
No, I mean, that makes sense, the teamwork aspect. And I know that this is the TV thing is your side hustle, and you spend your day like saving lives and actually seeing patients. But in your line of work, would you use ChatGPT or would you use AI in your diagnosis?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm certainly open to it. And I think, you know, doctors who are saying flat out no are being a little bit stubborn. And, you know, AI is coming whether we like it or not. And so it's best that we as doctors learn how to use it. Like Harvard Medical School, for example, is actually training medical students in how to use AI and how to sort of see the world of medicine through the lens of AI in addition. I mean, you know, I want to share a story. The other day I was with a patient, you know, about a college-age student, and as I was talking to them, they were fact-checking everything I was saying. They had ChatGPT. They had the app open in real time. They would stop me in my conversation and be like, wait, I want to run this by Sam Altman and the whole team at OpenAI. And they would test everything I was doing. Unfortunately, they agreed with me, but that's just an example of what we're seeing in the exam room nowadays.
Yeah, so that sounds like fact-checking your doctor in real time. I mean, that is next-level stuff. I do want to ask, though, could things go wrong over-relying on something like AI?
Yeah, you know, I recently was at a conference where I spoke with the CEO of Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Tom Mihaljevic, and he's sort of hired a chief AI officer, right? They're really sort of all in on AI over there. And what he was telling me, the big thing they're watching for is bias, because the data is only, or the models are only as good as the data that it's trained on. And if the data that it's trained on in medicine, you know, historically there is a lot of bias. There is a lot of sort of race-based algorithms and other things like that. And so if the data isn't that good, then the models aren't going to be that good. So that's something that they're really watching for, is how can we make these models more sort of socially aware and more aware of any sort of potential biases, whether it's race-based, gender-based, and make the models as accurate as we can be going forward.
AI only as clean as the data. Dr. Akshay Syal, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Anytime.
That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.